The first time I held my daughter after she was born, the midwife placed this tiny, slippery, purple creature on my chest, and I felt my heart physically explode. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but like an actual detonation behind my ribs that left me gasping and laughing and sobbing all at once. She was still covered in vernix and blood, her little mouth opening and closing like a fish trying to remember water. And in that instant, every single story I had ever told myself about being a separate person collapsed into a singularity of pure, ferocious love. I looked at her perfect, miniature fingernails, each one thinner than a whisper, and understood with a clarity that shredded me. These hands had never been anywhere but inside my wife's body, had never touched air, had never known cold or hunger or fear, and now here they were, clutching at my chest hair like I was the entire universe, which for her I was, and in that moment, I became the universe, clutching itself through a 3-hour-old body that didn't yet know it was supposed to be separate. The nurse kept asking if I wanted to cut the cord, and I couldn't speak because my throat was full of galaxies. When I finally managed to nod, the scissors felt like they were cutting through the fabric of reality itself, and I realized there was no cord to cut. There never had been. We were still one thing wearing two skins, and the illusion of separation was just the gentlest lie the universe tells itself, so it can experience the unbearable sweetness of reunion. 3 weeks later, I was alone with her at 3:17 m, that witching hour when the veil between worlds thins to tissue paper, and she was screaming with colic so fierce it sounded like she was being born all over again. I'd tried everything: swaddling, shushing, bouncing, the weird vacuum cleaner YouTube video, the football hold, the desperate naked chest-to-chest skin contact, while I paced the living room like a caged animal. Nothing worked. She was arching her back so hard I was terrified her spine would snap. Her face the color of ripe plums, fists clenched like tiny warriors. And then in the middle of my own exhausted breakdown, I caught sight of us in the dark window's reflection. This grown man with tears and snot running down his face, cradling a furious red-faced alien who was clearly trying to crawl back into the womb. And something in me surrendered so completely, it felt like dying. I stopped trying to fix her. I stopped trying to fix anything. I just held her against my heart and started humming the only song that came. An old Billie Holiday tune my mother used to sing while ironing. Not even the real melody, just the vibration of it, the feeling of it. And within 30 seconds, her screams turned to hiccups, then to sighs, then to the deepest, most trusting sleep I've ever witnessed. Her little body went completely limp, mouth open, one fist still tangled in my chest hair like she was holding on to the fact that we'd never actually been apart. I stood there until dawn, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too hard, because I understood that this helpless, milk-drunk creature trusting me with her entire existence was the rawest form of enlightenment I would ever touch. Not in an ashram, not on a mountaintop, but in the fluorescent glow of a baby monitor at 4:12 a.m. while the world slept and God wore footy pajamas with tiny avocados on them. That night rewired my entire nervous system. I started noticing how every single person I met was just a grown-up version of that screaming baby, still trying to crawl back into the womb of whatever they thought would finally make the pain stop. The barista with the dead eyes handing me my coffee, still 3 weeks old inside, clutching at chest hair that isn't there anymore. The CEO in the Tesla cutting me off on the highway, still purple and slippery, furious that the cord got cut too soon. The homeless vet on the corner shaking his cup like a rattle, still waiting for someone to hum Billie Holiday into his ribcage until the colic of separation eases. I started crying in grocery stores when I saw elderly people struggling with their carts. because I could feel the 3-week-old version of them trapped inside those arthritic hands, still trying to find their way back to the only place they ever felt safe. I started leaving $20 bills in the baby food aisle because some exhausted parent somewhere was pacing their kitchen at 3:17 a.m. praying for a miracle that looked exactly like a jar of organic pears and a stranger's kindness. I started bowing to every single person I passed on the street, not dramatically, just a tiny head dip, because I knew I was bowing to the same intelligence that grew my daughter's eyelashes while I slept, the same intelligence that was currently wearing a UPS uniform and delivering my neighbor's Amazon packages, full of things they hoped would finally make them feel less alone. And then there was the night I almost lost her. She was 18 months old, burning with a fever that climbed so fast the thermometer couldn't keep up. We rushed to the ER at 2 a.m., my wife in the passenger seat, clutching our baby like a football, while I drove through red lights, praying to every god I'd ever stopped believing in. The waiting room smelled like bleach and terror, and every cough from every sick kid sounded like a countdown. When the doctor finally said the word sepsis, I felt my knees buckle. I remembered my mother's hospice room, the way her hand went slack in mine, and I understood with a clarity that tasted like copper. This is how it happens. This is how the universe rips your heart out through your throat and teaches you what love actually costs. They admitted her immediately, hooked her tiny arm to an IV that looked like a garden hose attached to a dandelion stem. I sat in the plastic chair beside her crib while machines beeped, and my wife slept curled up on the window seat like a broken bird. At one point, the fever broke, and she opened her eyes, those supernova eyes that had first looked at me the moment she was born, and she smiled. Not a sick smile, not a medicated smile, a full wattage, avocado pajama, daddy you're my whole universe smile. And in that smile, I saw every single moment we would ever have together, and every moment we wouldn't. I saw her first day of kindergarten, her first heartbreak, her wedding day, the day she'd hold her own purple slippery alien on her chest and understand. I saw the day I'd be the one in the hospital bed, and she'd be the one holding my hand, while I tried to crawl back into whatever womb comes after this one. And I understood that every second I'd ever spent worrying about the future, or regretting the past, had been a betrayal of this smile. This smile was the only thing that was ever happening. This smile was the Big Bang still banging, the stars still screaming, the desert still whispering, "Tout ça, c'est toi." I stayed awake for 72 hours straight, singing Billie Holiday into her IV pole, into the beeping machines, into the exhausted nurses who kept checking on us, because they said they'd never seen a father look at a child like he was looking at the face of God wearing a hospital gown. On the third morning, the doctor came in and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Her blood work is perfect." I didn't tell him I hadn't done anything except stop trying to fix the unfixable and start bowing to the miracle that was currently drooling on my shoulder. When we finally brought her home, the house smelled like eucalyptus from the humidifier, and every surface was covered in the detritus of parental terror. Empty Pedialyte bottles, crumpled prayer hands, my wife's tears dried into salt trails on the hardwood. I carried our daughter to the backyard, where the cherry blossoms were just starting to fall, and I laid her down on a blanket under the tree. Petals drifted onto her face like snow made of light, and she laughed the way only children who've just escaped death can laugh. Like the universe just told the best joke in existence, and they're the only ones who get it. I laid down next to her and watched those petals land on her eyelashes, her cheeks, her tiny avocado pajama feet, and I understood that this was the real resurrection. Not some guy in a tomb 2,000 years ago, but this ordinary Tuesday morning, in April when death came to our door, wearing its scariest mask and love said not today, and the cherry blossoms celebrated by throwing themselves at our feet like confetti at the best party the cosmos had ever thrown. That was the moment I stopped teaching spirituality and started teaching surrender. Not the pretty kind with white linen and coconut water. The ugly kind that happens in pediatric ICUs and divorce courts and funeral homes where the carpet smells like old tears. The kind that happens when you're holding your mother's dead hand or your baby's burning body and you realize there's nothing to do except become the prayer you've been too proud to say out loud. I started inviting people into my home. Not a fancy retreat center, just our chaotic house with the leaky faucet and the dog that farts when she's nervous. And I'd sit them down in the living room where my daughter's toys were scattered like landmines of joy, and I'd tell them the only spiritual practice that had ever worked for me. Feel it all. Feel the terror of your child almost dying. Feel the guilt of every time you chose your phone over your partner's eyes. Feel the way your father's absence still lives in your rib cage like a second skeleton. Feel the way your mother's love is still trying to reach you through every stranger's smile. Feel it until it feels you back, until the feeling and the feeler collapse into one trembling, inseparable movement, until you realize that the pain you've been running from is just love in drag, trying to get your attention the only way it knows how, by breaking your heart open wide enough to let the whole damn universe in. Last month, a woman came to one of these living room circles carrying a shoebox. Inside was every letter her abusive ex-husband had ever written her. Threats, apologies, love bombs, suicide notes. She'd kept them for 12 years, like shrapnel she couldn't dig out. We sat in silence while she read them aloud, her voice cracking like thin ice. When she got to the last one, the one where he said he'd kill himself if she ever left, she looked up at me with eyes that had forgotten how to cry and asked, "How do I forgive this?" I didn't give her a technique. I didn't give her a mantra or a visualization or a fucking essential oil. I just asked her to close her eyes and tell me the first memory that came when she thought of being 3 years old. She started shaking immediately, and then the story poured out. Her father drunk, her mother screaming, hiding under the kitchen table clutching a stuffed giraffe, while plates shattered overhead. She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. And I asked her to imagine that 3-year-old girl walking into this room right now, still holding the giraffe, with one ear missing. And then I asked her to open her eyes and look at the shoebox. "That man," I said, "he never left that kitchen table either. He's still 3 years old, still clutching whatever got broken in him before he knew how to name it. The only difference is he learned to hurt people with his pain instead of crying it out under furniture." She stared at the letters like she was seeing them for the first time, and then she did something I'll never forget. She opened the box, took out every single letter, and started tearing them into the tiniest pieces she could manage. Not angrily, slowly, methodically, like she was unmaking the spell one word at a time. When the box was empty, she walked to the backyard where my daughter was digging holes for no reason, and she buried the pieces under the cherry tree. Then she got on her knees and whispered something to the dirt that made her whole body shake, with sobs so deep they sounded like laughter from another dimension. When she came back inside, her face was covered in soil and tears and something else. Something that looked suspiciously like peace-wearing war paint. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The giraffe with one ear was finally allowed to put its head down. That's what awakening actually looks like. Not levitating in lotus position, not having perfect boundaries and green smoothies and a daily gratitude practice that makes your teeth hurt. It looks like a 38-year-old woman burying 12 years of trauma under a tree that drops pink snow every spring. It looks like a father learning to hum Billie Holiday into an IV pole. It looks like a man who once stood on a bridge with a bottle of Jack, realizing 20 years later that the gull wasn't screaming at him. It was screaming for him. It looks like every single moment you thought would kill you, turning out to be the doorway you were too busy surviving to notice. It looks like the exact life you have right now. The one with the overdue bills and the weird rash and the partner who snores and the kid who won't stop asking why the sky is blue. Being the precise curriculum, the universe, designed to crack you open like the stubborn coconut you are. I wish I could tell you it gets easier. It doesn't. It gets truer. The more you see, the more you feel. The more you feel, the less you can look away from the mother in the grocery store whose food stamps didn't cover formula, or the teenager cutting herself in the school bathroom because the pain inside is louder than any scream, or the old man in the nursing home who hasn't had a visitor since 2019 and keeps introducing himself to the same nurse every day like it's the first time. The more you see, the more you become a walking wound that refuses to close, because closing would mean going back to sleep, and sleep is no longer an option when you've seen what's actually looking out of everyone's eyes. But here's the part they don't tell you in the spiritual Instagram quotes. The wound is where the light gets in. Yes, but it's also where the light gets out. Every time you let yourself feel the full weight of this world's heartbreak, you become a doorway for something ancient and unstoppable to move through you into the exact place it's needed most. You become the hum in the IV pole. You become the $20 bill in the baby food aisle. You become the stranger who looks the homeless vet in the eyes and says, "I see you," like it's the first time any human has ever meant it. This morning, my daughter woke me up by climbing onto my chest and whispering, "Daddy, I had a dream that we were all made of the same star stuff, and when we hug, we remember." Then she kissed my forehead exactly where the Himalayan grandmother kissed me all those years ago, and I felt the entire lineage of awakening pour through her avocado pajama lips into my third eye, like the gentlest lightning strike in history. I laid there crying while she traced my tears with her finger and asked if tears were just the stars leaking out when they got too full of love. I told her, "Yes, baby, that's exactly what they are." And then she wiped them on my shirt, the same way she did when she was 4, and buried the sparrow, and ran off to find her magnifying glass because she wanted to look for more star leaks in the backyard. I stayed in bed for a long time after she left, feeling the wet spot on my chest where her mouth had been, understanding that this ordinary Saturday morning with dinosaur footprints on my sheets and a 6-year-old hunting star Lex in the grass was the real rooftop in Tokyo. This was the real Sahara dune. This was the real hospice room where my mother taught me how to die properly by loving me badly in all the ways humans do. The feast is still happening, the menu is still burning, stars are still screaming, and every single tear you've ever cried was just the universe trying to get your attention long enough to remind you who you actually are. The entire cosmic love story wearing a human costume that's starting to itch because it's getting too small for what's trying to live through you now. Put the costume down, open your hands, let the star leaks fall where they may. The universe has been trying to get home to itself through your heartbeat since the first atom learned how to tremble, and it's getting impatient. It's time. It's you. It always was.